Okay, hon, you can hit start streaming now. Yeah, because I'm going to say hi to a few people as we get things ready to go here.
Yes, I do.
Hey, good evening and welcome to the first layer. We're a couple minutes early. There's a few people here in the chat this evening that I have to say hello to. We've got Johnny Gardner. We've got Jerry over on the 3D print and painting. And who else we got? We got Rex Waldy, Robert Avery, John Kitchen, Meatballs here tonight. We got the Park 88 and Paul Cumber. It is going well. I've been here in the studio all day. The gang was in. My wife is in. She's running the controls tonight. There's HVAC A to Z. Terry Murphy, hello. Jake from State Farm. Yo, we haven't seen you around, Jake, for a while. We got High Tech Redneck.
Howdy.
We got Corey Mack. Well, everybody's here tonight. Dan Brewster. Sup, Richard, he says. You know why Dan's here? Because of our special guest tonight. Dan's here because we have a special guest. Brian is not with me tonight, but tonight I have with me a great up-and-coming modeler. And there's my wife. We've got a great up-and-coming modeler, and he's been doing some fantastic work. I have some of his models. Admittedly, I haven't printed them all. Some of them are in various stages of printing. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to take a look at his work. We're going to discuss how he got into this line, and we'll tell you about that just as soon as we run our intro. Hey, welcome to the first layer, our live stream Saturday night. Tonight, I have with me a very, very special guest. I just got to make sure his audio is turned on. For some reason, my audio is flaking out on me tonight. There we go. We've got his audio on. And with me tonight is this fella. You guys might know him. He's Frag Mintz.
How's it going, everybody? Thank you, Richard, for having me on.
Hey, I've been wanting to have you on for a while, actually. It's just
I don't really know why, but we'll just go with it.
Well, you know,
there's a lot more talented people than me, but we'll go with it.
Well, we've got the chat open tonight. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of questions. We've got Dave Tellman in the house. We got Betty Boop 45, Raymond Emsley, my good friend and coworker, Minnesota Maker. Who else we got? Chris Galata. Hello to everybody here tonight. Tonight with me is Frag Mintz. Frag and I are going to be talking about his career in 3D design, 3D printing. We're going to talk a little bit about how he got into it. And we're going to discuss some of the models that he's got out. One he's particularly working on now, which I keep crossing my fingers is out any day now. I keep telling him I want to send him money, and he keeps going, it's not ready yet.
It is open. It's actually been open for about 2 days.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Frag, let's first talk about how you got into doing the style of models that you're doing.
I mean, really, it just kind of, whatever I'm in the mood for, whatever I decide to do. Anybody who, like Chris or Dan, or even like you and Jerry know, sometimes I'm it's like a squirrel thing. Sometimes I'll be working on one thing, and next thing it's somebody says something, oh man, I think I could do that. Let me go over here and do that. So there's really no rhyme or reason. I will say that I've progressively noticed that I've gotten better, every model, so I just try to push myself more and more.
I think the very first one I have of yours is the Galactus model with the Silver Surfer hat, which I will admit is not finished. it's sitting in various stages of primer.
I've seen people, it's humbling to know that people take the time, not just for me, but for other modelers, take the time to print the stuff that we put out, because some people, they just go in a folder and they'll get to them. But Galactus was definitely interesting, and I tried to do my best on it. And I, like I told you a couple days ago, I think I got to redo it over because it just drives me nuts looking at it. It's like, pulling teeth, like, ugh.
Back in the day when I used to actually draw, I went through that same process. I'd draw something and then I'd go back and look at it 6 months later and I go, no, that's not right. And I'd do it
Right.
again. And then 6 months later, I'd revisit it and do it again. So I understand exactly what you're saying when you want to go back and you want to redo some different ones. Minnesota Maker, he's asking Jake from State Farm, link to his models. Now, you can find Frag's models on your Facebook page, correct?
Yeah. You can just go to my page, go through my photos, and pick, look for one, and just PM me or ask me about them, and if you say, hey, I saw you on the first layer, we'll try and get you a good deal. We're working on, me and Dan and some other people are working on stuff to where get a site going. I do have a couple models on CG Trader just because I'm trying to, feel them out. But for the most part, with the way not the printing community, but the file trading issues,
Yeah.
It's just putting them up, for whatever. With Mesh Safe now and some other security functions, it's easier and more secure to deal with people one-on-one. And if you have a problem, I can help you,
There you go. Now, let's talk a little bit about your style. Now, you're very much into comic book style characters. One that I particularly like, I'm just going to cut to it right here. I'm going to have to make sure his audio is on all the time. I got to tell my wife to keep turning on audio, but that's okay. This that you guys are seeing up on the screen, this is The Death in the Family, based on the DC Comics run, where it was a phone-in campaign to kill Jason Todd. One of my favorite pieces that you've done to date. This one I actually have started to print, and I remember talking to you about wanting to do the cape actually in fabric, and you had informed me that the way that the model was cut, that it might be a little bit hard. And as I saw it, you were absolutely right about that. This piece, I gotta say, it's probably one of my absolute favorites. It reminds me so much of the original story, which of course came out, I believe, in the 90s, 80s,
Yeah.
I believe it came
Yeah.
out. The Death in the
that's-
Family. There you go. Absolutely gorgeous piece. Now, I'm trying to do portions of it on the resin printer as well. Once I
Yeah.
do get that done, I will paint it, and of course, we'll get you pictures and that sort of thing.
I'd
What
say
I like to, go ahead.
the best thing, if you're going to do something, as far as for resin, I would definitely suggest doing the cowl and the cape
Mhm.
in resin. They're sectioned off. That way you'll get all that detail from his
Yeah.
cowl, and then the cape pieces, and they lock into the body.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I noticed that. That's why I was saying I couldn't take the cape off and actually put a fabric one in there.
Yeah.
I've done that with a Supergirl model from another designer, or not a Supergirl model, pardon me, the Dark Side model from another designer, and he had originally had a sculpted cape. I liked it, but it was just a little on the thick side, so we got some red fabric, and we just sort of soaked it and got it to the shape that we wanted it, and stuck it in his hand. So
I actually
ahead.
like when people take models and incorporate other mediums and other things into them. It's not just 3D printing.
Mhm.
Like if you have a more mechanical piece, add some mechanical function into it. If you want some textures and you don't want to print the cape, capes are really difficult to print. I mean, they're not just difficult from a printing standpoint because I print, but to slice them the right way and to get them to flow the right way, capes are the worst. Like, I dread doing capes, really.
I don't blame you. And, I can see that a lot of sculptors, when they go and we'll just look at Batman for a quick moment here, notice that a lot of sculptors haven't done the scallops on the capes. And
Right.
I understand from a design standpoint and from a printing standpoint how difficult that's going to work out in the end.
Yeah, because I mean, if you did the scallops, you have these big arcs, and then you have these really fine points. Now, with resin printing, you could probably get away with it, but then you'd
Mhm.
have to cut so many different pieces, and then of course it's blending them together. So that's a big function of when you're just, and from my standpoint, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of talented artists out there, but understanding the 3D print community and how things work when you print is a big part of giving people what they want, but and telling them the limitations.
Exactly. I've got another piece up here I want to show, and I'm going to actually switch to that now. Let's just cut to that. And Frag, if you wouldn't mind, just explain this piece. This is the Superman Doomsday piece. If you
Yeah.
wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about this piece and how you came up with it.
So, a lot of people come at me and say, hey, the X statue company has something, and we'd like it, or that'd be awesome. We as designers always get proposed projects all the time, and it was one of those things that I actually just kind of fell into. I was like, you know what, I think I could do something to where it shows the flow and it shows the dynamic of the fight and the passion between the two. And I just tried to do my best. I actually had to drive 4 hours up to Dallas to meet Jody. Me and Jody Reimer. I always mess up his last name, but he's another designer. Me and him are buddies, and I was having texture issues. I couldn't figure out how to get the textures on there the right way, and I actually drove 4 hours to meet with him. I probably spent an hour and a half with him, and then I drove 4 hours back home just so I could get the texture on his suit the right way on Superman's suit. So I try to, go all out,
I got to tell you, man, I love that piece. It's I'm a big DC fan anyway. We're
Yeah.
going to explore some of your other ones here as well, but let me ask you: when you are getting into designing these characters, what do you look for inspiration? I see a lot of DC, Marvel, '80s cartoon kind of stuff. Is that where you kind of want to stay, or do you want to branch out into more exotic pieces?
Oh yeah, my goal is to eventually, these are just stepping stones and training. For me, they're exercises. It's all exercise to get better and better. My goal is to, with every model, to push myself more and more into other, mediums and other artworks. But I typically try to just do something other than the Batman. I've had people say, well, it doesn't look like the cover. Well, it's not supposed to look like the cover. It's supposed to be an interpretation of the cover. But I had people with the Supergirl and Robin, or Supergirl and Batgirl and Wonder Woman one. Well, what did you use for your reference? I didn't use anything. I just did it. I mean, we're old enough to know that we get flooded. We've gotten flooded with images over the years, so we don't have to go and research. It's embedded in our imagination.
Exactly.
So.
It's like second nature now. It's like when I draw. I mean,
Right.
I can sit down and draw pretty much any comic book character now.
Right.
Over the years because they're ingrained in my psyche. You're absolutely right. Here's another one I really like. This really took me back when I saw it originally when you were designing this one and slowly working on it. I'm a big '80s cartoon fan, and Thundercats. This holds a very special place in my heart. This one.
Thundercats. Oh, look at that.
So we're going to come back to you in just a sec there, Frag, and we'll show that one off. I've got the picture of one up. Let me just go to your
I
camera
think
here
that's
real quick.
I think Marco painted that one. He was one of the first ones to get it.
Let's go back to you there, and you can show off yours. There we go. That
So
is
actually,
absolutely gorgeous.
Are you doing
So
that
after
too?
Galactus, I've done a couple of
'Cause
them.
I need to cheer it.
I have a Chitara. So what's funny is, or not funny, my how I got into it. My mentor, Leandro Wagner, he's actually the one who did the piping and the face on that model. I didn't do that face. He actually took the time to do the face, but I did all the other work and put it all together. It was kind of my first real after Galactus, like understanding the process while he was mentoring me. So after that one, we did Panthro, and we did, I did Panthro, and I did Tigra, and I did Chitara.
I'm just going to cut to Panthro right now.
That one's right over here next to my monitor.
So,
and actually, Hobby Mike has a different one. If you on his side, he has one where it's standing, but he only sells the print. He doesn't sell that file, and that file is specifically for him.
Gotcha. This is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I'm a huge fan.
And that chain is actually from a guy named Eric Kruger. This is before I knew any of you guys did resin printing. Printed that chain onto those nunchucks so that it would whip around his back. So, because that'd be really hard to do at FDM.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you, man, I love the work that you're doing, and every time I see a new piece, my eyes just kind of glaze over, and I go, how much money can I spend now? How much will my wife allow me to spend? And let's talk a little bit about that for a second. I mean, you have now a nice little collection of models that you've done at a very reasonable price. Let's talk about how you decide how you're going to price your models. What are some of the key factors in that?
I kind of at the beginning, I was fairly new, so I just priced them as if you would do anything, any kind of labor price. But then I started realizing, I have customers all over the world. And I'm fortunate for that. And not everybody's monetary value is the same as in Canada or in the U.S.
Right.
So $15 here is a lot of money somewhere else, or $30 or $40. So what I've tried to do in the last, in the last year at least, is keep them below 20. It doesn't matter how many hours I put into it. I try to keep them below 20. That way, it's at least manageable for people that are outside of certain currencies, and they can afford it because of the exchange rate. So I really do try to keep people in mind universally versus just locally or on my continent, so to speak.
Gotcha. Well, I got to tell you, here's another one I want to show off here real quick. This is the Spider-Man and Rhino model my wife hasn't seen yet, and I know that she's going to be going, I want that model.
I need it.
No, it's not a want. She's just telling me she needs it. So, what was because this looks like the black-suited Spider-Man. What was your inspiration for this piece?
Oh, look at the size. Okay, switch back.
So there's actually two, when you get the file, there's actually two Spider-Mans, and it's probably, let's say there's a Coke can, so it's pretty big, but I started off, to be honest with you, just doing Rhino. That was it, because everybody was like, Frag, you're always doing superheroes. Let's do a villain. And Rhino was kind of left out of the scene for, I think Josh Schnorr had did a couple bad guys for Spider-Man, like Electro and some other ones, but Rhino was kind of left out. So I started doing Rhino, and then people were like, it'd be, here's a comic book cover where Spider-Man's kind of standing in front of him, and it just so happened, like we were just talking about, maybe somewhere ingrained in my brain, when I was doing this Rhino, it just happened to fit this comic book cover. So, I started putting Spider-Man in there, and then it's a base, and then of course people were like, well, what would be awesome is do black suit Spider-Man in the same pose, so you have two Spider-Mans. So, and actually, so now it comes with Rhino, 2 Spider-Mans, and actually 3 bases. You have the museum bases that go with each of them, and then you have the big base. So you got a lot of options. I try to give people options for their money. You know, I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but $15, you know, for one model, if you can get some quantity out of what you're paying for, it's a little bit more justifiable, in my opinion. You know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's another piece I'm going to pull up here real quick because you've done a variant on this one as well. This is, let me go back to you. Why don't I have your picture up? There we go. There we go. Right there. So here we've got the Batman with cowl off sitting in front of his Bat computer in the Batcave. I love this piece. You've got 2 variants of this, do you not?
Three.
Three.
Yeah, for $20. And actually that thing came, like you said, you know, how did I figure that out? You know, I was just having, like we were talking before we started the stream, you know, about having a long day, just like beat down. And, you know, I really didn't see anything out there that showed Batman just kind of, you know, just pooped. Like, man, this is after a long fight, a long day, you know, dealing with everything. And what does he do? You know, does he come over and have a beer? Or, you know, what's the process? You know, what is he thinking about? So you have the one you're looking at is the base, you know, bottom line model that anyone could print, and then the next tier is that fits on.
Let me see if I can find it. Oh, there's Jaga.
Yeah,
I know it's in here somewhere. Oh, there it is. I just passed it.
Yeah. So that one you saw before then fits onto that stalagmite, whatever it is, with some you know, metal, you know, things for in the Batcave, and then from that one there's a longer one where the Batmobile sits on it, which the Batmobile is included. And so you take that base one and you put it on there, and a few people have printed all 3 stages. I know Walton Harris is doing some crazy stuff with his. He, you know, like he's you know, machining some stuff. He's putting monitors in the monitor. I think Chris K is putting a light behind where it says Thomas Wayne murdered, and that's the newspaper from the original, well, the 1980s Batman movie.
Right.
So it was just, you know, a sympathetic piece. I get kind of tired of seeing action. I wanted something with empathy, you know.
Yeah,
for the character.
This captures that struggle of how do you keep going every day. And I mean, not only for a superhero, but for each and every one of us that are 3D printing. I mean, we have 3D printing failures. We have life failures. And this is one of those pieces that kind of encompasses all that. And that's kind of what drew me to it. I mean, this is one that's on my wish list for sure. FPV Will is saying, where to get them? Where do you get these? And as we stated earlier, you can get a lot of these, or actually all of them, by PMing Frag Mintz on Facebook. He also has his own Facebook page. And you guys can just go there, or just find him over on the first layer. He's always there, always. We always want to see new stuff from Frag. Sometimes he forgets.
Yes, I do.
My wife said she just put the link in the description.
No, not just. It's been there for a while.
She says it's been there for a while. So the Frag, or pardon me, it is in the chat. Maybe she can just pull that again and put it up in the chat again, and then you guys can find it. So the Trinity, which you're working on now, again, one of my I keep chomping at the bit to get that piece, and I will before the end of the weekend. I gotta say, what I really like about that is it gives it that fun sort of anime playful look, with Supergirl, Wonder Woman, and Batgirl on the beach. It kind of reminds me of, what was that anime game that came out where they were always playing beach volleyball, and it was all these anime characters that were just in bikinis?
Street Fighter?
That could be
Street Fighter?
That could be it.
Yeah.
They made a movie about it too, I think, at some point.
With Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys are interested, go ahead.
That was actually a dare, that model.
Oh, really?
That was actually a dare. Yeah.
How sexy can you get? Was that the dare?
No, there was another model being done, and people wanted something a little different. And I anybody who knows my stuff, I mean, you just showed a couple pictures. I haven't done a lot of women.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a dare. Hey, can you do Supergirl? And then I did Supergirl, and I was like, what would be cool? What else would be cool is have Batgirl, but here, and then they became, well, since you've already done those two, let's do Wonder Woman. So if I can't do something, I try to tell people like I can't do it. But if I'm in a good rhythm, and it seems the composition is working, again, I try to give people their money's worth.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Here's another piece I want to draw everybody's attention to, because Christopher Reeve, I don't know if many people know, but a lot of the Superman stuff with Christopher Reeve was filmed here in Canada. A lot filmed here in Calgary and surrounding area. Actually, for about a half an hour from Calgary, you can go and see the Kent House, which you will have seen in Superman 1, 2, and 3. It's in a little town called Blackie, Alberta. It's not far from here. So I'm going to pull this picture up. And for anybody that doesn't know, this is your version of Christopher Reeves. I'm looking at this as a memorial tribute piece.
Yeah.
Could I be close to that?
Yeah.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
Tell us what inspired you to do this one.
Well, at the time, everybody was doing Superman. There was a couple Superman models out there, but there was nothing in regards to Christopher Reeves, and I was still pretty new. I mean, I probably went through 20 different heads before I even got to a point where I felt okay that it looked good. And then I actually reached out to a guy named I think it's like Takaka he actually models. That's all he does is he models Christopher Reeve's face. He works for the Christopher Reeves Foundation, but he does it by hand, and he's really hardcore about it, and he's really good. And when I messaged him, I was like, look, I know I just need some feedback. I need some help. He's like, look, you're in a different medium. I think it looks great. And at that point, I just left it alone. I was like, he said it looks good, I'm done. Now I look at it, and if you Google 3D Christopher Reeve's 3D model, there are people out there that have done it, and they look great, but they're not released to us as a community.
Right.
So that's the thing, is one of the main reasons I got into this was because there's a lot of stuff that as a community we would like to print and have in our homes, but it's just not available.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny because last year I started to do a little bit of the convention circuit here in Alberta and in BC. And we went out to a show here that is called the Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo. And I took some pieces. One of the pieces I took was a Hulk piece, an early Hulk piece that was done by Sergio Malik. Sanix, yeah. So I took that out, and so many people came to see that Hulk pose, and they would say, the thing that would come out of their mouth to me was, we've got all kinds of Hulk statues out there from, the big time companies. He says, but nobody's done a pose like this. And he says, and the biggest thing was they were amazed that it was 3D printed. They were amazed that it was hand painted. And I think I even painted part of that on one of my episodes, just showing off some airbrush techniques. And the funny thing is that one guy eventually came up to me and said, look, I need it. I have to have it. Nobody's got it. It's a great pose. I don't care if the base isn't finished. He says, I want it. So we settled on a fair price, and he got it. And I haven't reprinted another one since.
One of the biggest, one of the things you have to understand is in a statue with a statue company and where they're marketing, let's say they only do 500 pieces, but they have to gear it towards a certain market and a certain type of people that are going to pay the X amount of money for that statue. So they have to be kind of not plain, but they have to be uniformed, and they have to be recognizable. The thing is, in the 3D print community, there are a lot of people that are printing, and so you kind of have a little bit more flexibility in what you want to do. Sanix, I love his Zorro. Like, No one's
Mm-hmm.
ever done a Zorro.
Yeah.
So, for him to do that, it was like, wow, that's, to me, that's one of my favorite pieces of his.
As a fan of that type of artwork, one of my favorite all-time creators, of course, is Frank Frazetta. I go way back with Frank Frazetta artwork. Ever since I was a teenager, I've been into his artwork. And to date, other than stuff that has been made in the statue community, Sideshow and the other big companies that have done it, nobody really has created a really good Frazetta piece. So
Right.
maybe that's some inspiration for somebody down the road like yourself. Frazetta is one of my favorites, and he's got a lot of great artwork, not just Conan, but he's done so many pieces that are fantasy related. And for me, that type of work presents its own challenges when it comes to the finishing and the painting of them, which
Yeah.
is sort of
And
my
the modeling.
forte. Yeah, and the modeling, absolutely. Because
There's
Frank
a
had
lot of sub-tools.
he had a unique style. So I'm going to put the challenge out to you and all of your community of designers and say, somebody do a Frazetta piece.
There you go.
I'm sure somebody out there is going to agree with
I'm
me.
sure somebody's gonna. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be all over the
I'm gonna check
Frazetta
it out
stuff.
when I get done. Yeah. I'm always looking to try doing something different. I mean, you kind of at the beginning I got pigeonholed a little bit on the Thundercats, but
Mhm.
when I very first started, before you guys even saw any of that stuff, I worked. I got laid off, and then I had bought a printer, and I bought a computer, and I was gonna do something, and I ended up making a scale Thunder tank that's remote controlled, and it's on
Wow.
YouTube, and and after I got done with that, because I was like, I mean, if I have a 3D printer, I'm not printing a Tuggy, I'm going to print a Thunder tank. And that's what I did. And it took me 6-7 months to do it.
Wow.
But after that, I was kind of stuck. I was like, okay, now what? I've been all about this Thunder tank. And then I happened to meet Leandro, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be sitting here talking to you. I'd probably be back at doing whatever. I don't even know what I'd be doing.
I have
I don't.
many days like that, believe me.
I really have no clue. If I wouldn't have met him and people like Ross, Sage, and Dan, and you and Jerry, there's a lot of people in the community that have been steadily, not just me, but other modelers that are new to the industry or new to the community.
Hmm.
That give positive feedback and say, hey, you know what, it's getting better, it's getting better, it's getting better. So.
It is. The quality of models that are coming out now, even over the last year since I've really started to explore, more of this type of modeling, the quality is getting better. And here's what I find different among different designers is some will design beautiful pieces, but they're not 3D printable. They're just not. Others will
Right.
design with 3D printing in mind, and then work out all the mechanics to be sure that everything goes together as seamless as it possibly can. And Sergio, yourself, and a few others really kind of dive in and say, look, if I'm going to make this, I want to make it printable. Tell us a little bit about your process in doing that.
So first off is, when I'm looking at something, I'll design it. I do all my stuff in ZBrush. I know other people use Blender and they use some other programs, but most of the guys at Slideshow only use ZBrush.
Mhm.
So that's where I want to get eventually. So when I'm doing it, I'm trying to make sure that if is it printable. There's a couple things that you have to look for. One, the scale. Scale is very important. You got to think about the customer. Not everybody has a 400 by 400 by 400. So I kind of try to make mine, and that's something that Jerry at the beginning, he was like, look, you sold me Lino, and then you sold me Panthro, and Panthro's like 800 by 400 by whatever, and Lino's like this scale. So that was the schooling, that was
Yeah.
the schooling. So ever since then, everything is at a certain scale. And the Batman that you talked about earlier, I had to, when you make those three different pieces, the base, the three, you're actually exporting them out of ZBrush as a whole. They're all separated, but you have to scale it to the biggest piece. So that means that big piece that the Batmobile's on, if I would have scaled it the right, not the right way, but if I would have scaled it to where I wanted it, that whole big piece would have been like 800 by 200 by whatever. So I had to scale that whole thing really small and tell people when I send them the email, look, you're going to have to scale up.
Right.
If you want, if you're doing FDM, you're going to have to scale up, because I had to do it this way for this reason. And I try to put instructions in there. So, keys, making sure keys lock in, making sure that how I do the keys for even a new person, how are they going to orientate it on the bed? Because not everybody knows, hey, Jerry likes to print his heads down because he doesn't like the ring put on there. Are they going to put their hand on the platform or versus their elbow? So I'm always thinking about how, scale, orientation, and then of course, the design. Like, is it going to translate from the picture that the renders I've been giving once it's cut? When someone puts it together, is it going to look the same way?
Right. Now let's talk about scale. What scale are you most comfortable working in? Is it like quarter scale, 1/6 scale?
I think I'm like more quarter scale. I mean, I like to print it, big. I like to print big. Not as big
Me
as
too.
Jerry Knapp, but I like to print big because it makes me, I just because I can. I don't even know. I don't want something small like that Batman that I showed earlier is probably one of the smallest things that I have in here. I mean, he's a little bit bigger than Spider-Man, but the overall piece between the two, Batman's the smaller one. And I could have went bigger, but I was really just trying to make sure the cape was going to work. So design-wise, when you're designing in ZBrush, you can design at any, you can zoom in, so it's not really you're not designing at a certain scale unless you're doing miniatures, which I haven't gotten that far yet. But
right.
It's really exporting. It's exporting out, and when you're exporting out, is who is going to print this? Do I have more new people, or do I have So you got to kind of pop it in the middle because
Gotcha.
someone like you knows how to scale up.
Yeah.
There's people that really have no idea how to scale down. Like it's a really big deal, and so it's easier to say I need you to scale up, and then to scale down. So
Sure.
I just try to make it at a reasonable scale. Like the Supergirl, she's like if you lay her down on her back, I think she's like 400 long, and she's only like 150 wide.
Right.
But of course she's going to get stood up. So, and then it's legs and torso and head. So, I mean, those are all little pieces. Each one of those little pieces are only, 100 by 100 by 100.
Sure.
So it's,
pretty easy.
And now I got to think about the igloo guys that are getting, these igloos or whatever they're called, because everybody's getting them. So I got to think about that platform and how are they printing there,
Well, to be honest, I don't have an Elegoo Mars. I've got one of the more expensive machines. I've got a Wanhao D7.
There you go.
But hey, listen, I want to bring up something that Michael Maxwell says. Have you ever thought about doing horror Universal Studio stuff? And this is something that I put in special STLs not too long ago. I kind of threw that out there with doing some of the Universal horror monsters. Have you thought about doing any of those?
Yeah, Hobby Mike is. Hobby Mike, if any of you guys don't know, I think it's NY3 Creations. He likes that kind of throwback monster type stuff, and I just haven't gotten there yet. A lot of people say, well, you're really skilled, you're really talented, and it's like, I appreciate it, but it really takes a lot of planning and a lot of skill set to do certain things, and people don't really realize how much work goes into it. And every model, like I said earlier, I'm just trying to push and push and push. But now that I know, hey, maybe try to do it. Halloween's coming up. I literally was just talking to my daughter about it. I was like, I know Halloween's coming up. I don't really have anything Halloween-y. I mean, I got a slide from Thundercats that I haven't released yet, but it's not horror. It's not.
Yeah.
I want something scary. I want something that people could really bite their teeth into, so to speak.
If I could make a
So I have
suggestion,
thought about it.
Sam from Trick or Treat.
Okay.
If you've ever seen the movie, Trick or Treat. I believe there's a bunch of great actors in it and actresses. It's sort of an anthology of a bunch of different little stories that all kind of intertwine around this character called Sam. And he's wearing a sack over his head and a onesie. I won't spoil it for anybody, but anybody that's seen it. Jerry over at 3D Printing and Painting is saying Frankenstein versus Frag Mintz.
You know, he's like the third person that said. I find it odd and flattering at the same time that he's like the fourth person that says, "Why don't you do a model of yourself?" And I'm like, why would anybody want to buy a model of me? Like, I'm just some guy from Texas that's just trying to go to school and you know, do something interesting. I know you got yours.
I can't give this thing away.
See? But see, didn't Sanix do that for you?
He did,
and I thought that was
great. This came out beautiful. It says the first layer on the front, and then, of course, it's got my name on the back. He did a wonderful job. Yeah. And that was done off those scans of my head that Ben Eady, a good friend of mine, did. Yeah, we did this one in bronze. So,
well, you could give them away if you wanted, but, you know.
I can just see the landfill of my heads just building up.
Yeah. 30 years from now, some kid finds a whole big pile of them, you know, just like, who is this guy? Who is this guy, Richard?
What's the first layer? This is like the lost
layer.
This is like the lost Atari games.
Like the time machine.
All right, let's have a look here. Trick or Treat, there's an image there that Jerry, my wife, just put into the chat. Andrew says, do a mutant part biting into a hand. That might be kind of cool.
Yeah. I just saw that they, you know, everything gets recycled. So
sure.
They're coming out with the Addams Family cartoon movie, another one, another rendition. And I actually, what's the butler's name? You know,
Lurch.
The butler. Lurch.
Lurch, yeah.
Yeah, it's Lurch. When I first saw the trailer, I was like, man, that is a dope looking Lurch. I like, in comparison to the original show. Most of us remember the original show. It was reminiscent of it, you know. But I saw that and I was like, man, you know, it'd be cool to do some Addams Family stuff, you know. So, you know, it's always, you know, in the head, trying to figure it out, you know.
Making a bobblehead, Terry Murphy says. Making a bobblehead.
Of me or of you?
I'm not
sure. We can make yours into a bobblehead.
Yeah, I'll send you over the file. You can play with it. Addams Family car, Jerry's saying. Michael Castle is, he'll think he was an Egyptian pharaoh. I'm not sure what he means by that, but I'm not an Egyptian pharaoh. I'm just a fat guy from Canada.
Oh, yeah. The bronze part?
Yeah.
They're like praising you. Oh, the first layer.
I don't think we're getting that much praise because we're not at 1 million subs.
Hey man, it's you know, I remember when you first started this to have over 10,000 people in you. That's a big deal. I remember when you first started.
Yeah, we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary.
Right. I remember when you first started.
Yeah, we've been 2 years now. We're doing this, and we broke 10,000 before the 2-year mark, which was one of my goals. And we successfully did that. And, you know, it's because of people like yourself who contribute to the communities. It's the people that come to our communities and watch the show and go into the live streams. And again, I can't thank all you guys enough for that. And next year we're trying to go to Shenzhen so that we can bring you guys some unique content. And maybe take some pieces with us that we can show off in some of these factories that we want to go to. What do we got here? One of the things I wanted to ask you about, and not too many people have done these, and that's like the Abbott and Costello style of 3D design. Like nobody's done any vintage Abbott and Costello or the
like 2 or 3 of those
Munsters.
out there.
What's that?
Yeah. I thought there was 2 or 3 Abbott and Costello prints out there. I know no one's done the monsters yet. No one's done, some of the kind of the throwback classic, to us it's throwback classic stuff, 60s, 70s, and 80s, even the 50s. And I think that's, from my perspective is that a lot of these designers are pretty, the ones that are established aren't in the community. They work for companies.
Yeah.
The younger people are the ones popping out these really cool, kind of newer content things. And so when you ask them, hey, can you do something? They're looking at it from a number standpoint. How many people are going to buy this? How many people are going to want this? And even me, I tend to do stuff that I know is, between like my dad and me, like that age range,
Right.
Because that's a lot of cool stuff in there. I mean, that we never got, because of, it just was never made.
And the funny thing is that when we talk about the collecting community, which we touched on a little bit earlier, is it's a different animal from us in the 3D printing community. I mean, there is some crossover, but when we look for designs to print for ourselves, and whether we paint them or we not paint them, we just kind of build them and put them on the shelf. These are pieces of art, unique pieces of art, that we didn't pay thousands of dollars for or hundreds of dollars for, but we still have something very substantial that was done by a very talented creator like yourself. And to have that, and I see so many people now, even people that come in here to the store and they see some of the pieces that we have, they're like, where did you get that? Where can I get that? How long did it take you to print it? What, how much filament did you use? And you try and answer those questions, and from piece to piece to piece, very few do I remember how much filament we used. I know that on the Superman I've been painting at home that you've seen a few times, and many people here have been following the painting tutorials on that. That took a roll and a half of filament and 2 weeks to print the whole thing. So
100K roll or a 500K roll?
No, 1 kilogram roll. So a kilogram and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. So a kilogram and a half.
That's not bad.
It's not too bad. It's only got like 10% infill in it. It's super light. Super light.
Yeah.
One of the guys that I watch quite often, Rafael Raballero Jr., Jerry Knapp will know who I'm talking about. He's a painter, and he takes statues that are done by Sideshow and different people and repaints them. Exactly. Does a wonderful job.
I think I've seen his stuff.
Does a wonderful job, and he was the one that I picked up on that flecking technique that I talked about in an earlier painting video, and it has made so much difference in the way that I paint now as opposed to the way that I painted before. I came from the world where we painted 28 millimeter miniatures for tabletop wargaming, and you're painting hundreds of these things to make an army.
Yeah.
And then you would do like your prize piece or your show piece that would be on the table, and that would take you 2 weeks. Now I don't have to paint in that scale anymore. I can paint in a much bigger scale, and
which is more visible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm finding now with even your models, I find that a lot of people are now starting to go that extra step and do things like texturing the skin, texturing the clothing, getting these seam lines done right. Doing hair that's not just thrown on.
Flat.
Very flat, exactly. You're doing hair with some character and some movement. I've got a piece here.
Which is difficult for FDM printers.
Absolutely,
resin,
it is.
Not so much, but for resin, and back to what you were saying earlier, is you have to think about, is this going to be printable for FDM?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use Silly Putty for masking off as well. Some people are talking about that. Evil Villain Diorama, that would be really cool to do. Any evil villains. I mean, there's all kinds of them. Another category that nobody's touched, and this might be something to put down in your little notebook, James Bond.
Yeah, 007.
Yeah.
Which one?
Well, I'm kind of partial to Sean Connery and Roger Moore. I actually worked with Roger Moore on a UNICEF campaign years and years ago.
Really
Oh yeah, what an amazing man!
cool.
Let me tell you, this
Was he
guy.
was he was he tall? Was he big?
No,
As big as he seems? He's not that big.
no.
Like what? 5'7", 5'8"?
He's about 5'7", 5'8".
So
A
like a
heavy
normal guy.
cigar smoker, very
Yeah,
heavy
I could
cigar
see that.
smoker. Yeah, he was at a UNICEF benefit in Winnipeg, and I was working on the show with the lead entertainer, and we all went backstage and we had a couple of drinks and smoked a couple cigars and had some wonderful conversation. Roger Moore is not with us anymore, but man, he was a fascinating guy to sit down and talk to.
And that's when you realize, man, a cell phone would be awesome right about now. But
Yeah, you
probably
bet.
didn't have cell phones back then. You had like disposable cameras. You didn't, let me go run to Eckerd's. If any of you don't know what Eckerd's is, but
They probably don't. The younger viewers
they
won't know
probably
what that
don't.
is.
It's like
Michael Maxwell
Walgreens only
saying
smaller.
Bond has been done. Well, which one's been done? I don't know.
If I would do a Bond, I would do the vehicles in
Oh yeah,
like the car that could go underwater,
yeah.
and I would do a dial where you could have that car in like a fish tank with
Oh, that would
with lights and everything, like the whole nine.
sign
You
me
know,
up.
you know,
Put me the
you
first one
know,
on your list for that one. I'm all about that.
that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely, it would be. And over the years, being in the business that I'm in, of course, I used to do a show all about comic books, as you know, and I had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in the industry, some great people in the Star Trek industry. Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, what a great gal. There's another one that nobody has done as a 3D print yet, and I would be over the moon to have one of those. I mean, I think I have a Mego figure of her somewhere, which is not a very good likeness, but one of these days I'll put the
You know,
interview up on Facebook for everybody to watch.
one of the hardest things to do, and I mean, I kind of hit that magic a little bit with Reeves because that one was a big deal. People still ask me about it.
Yeah.
But when you get into when you get into really, really recognized characters, not characters in comic books, because those have been drawn over in different kind
Yeah.
of by different people. But when you start touching on Uhura and Spock and Bones and Jim and Scotty and Khan and things like that, in your head, if you don't hit it the right way, it's a bust. You got to hit it the right way, or it's just not going to make any sense. But trust me, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so that's on my dad's list that I have to do.
Well,
I literally have a blueprint of the Enterprise literally above my monitor right now.
I think I've got something here that we're going to talk about after the show. I'll bring it down and show it to you. These went out when the first reboot movie went out. They're a beautiful lithograph that I think you'll absolutely enjoy. And I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, as people know. Jerry wants to know if we can post a link to Raphael. Absolutely, Jerry. Go ahead and post a link to Raphael. I can't really type anything because the chat's down here, and my attention I need to have up here. So if anybody is looking to find pieces by Frag, you can always go to the Facebook page that we've got for the first layer. You can always look up Frag Mintz on Facebook as well. I'm sure you can PM him. He's open to suggestions. Now, are you taking commissions, or are you working on strictly pieces for long term?
So right now, I don't take commissions, and I'll tell you why. Is because I don't feel I'm at a stage that I can deliver what people, extracting that information and a skill set, that's what I'm going to school for. But what I do try to do is when people say, hey, this would be great and this would be great, I doodle. I try to get and see where I could go with it. And if it makes sense and it looks right, then I just put it out and like, oh wow, that's great. You ended up doing it. So my goal is that by next year to do commissions, to be able to really be able to focus on what people want. But right now I'm doing my stuff. I'm also doing, I fix a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of people message me, modelers, groups, and I spend a lot of time fixing other people's models so that the community can print them. And I usually don't even charge them.
Right.
I mean, because like you said earlier, you have people that design really good stuff, but they're not printable.
Right.
And if people have invested that money into that model, and it's not going to be good, it's not good for the community, it's not good for the designer if it doesn't work out. So I try to, me and other people try to fix stuff so that there isn't a disruption in the community, because it could go really, really bad really quick.
Well, while we've still got a few minutes here, I want to emphasize to those of you that are watching on the live stream and those that may be watching this conversation later on, that if you are purchasing your models, please purchase them from the artist directly, and don't go to other people that may share them with you for their own personal gain. This is how artists make money. This is how I make money, doing a YouTube show for you guys to enjoy and hopefully get some education out of. And I really want to stress the fact that don't share files, and please go to the artist to get the files that you are looking for and get them right from the source.
Yeah.
He has a large vault with concepts, Dan Brewster is saying.
I do have a I call it the vault. I do have a vault full of stuff that I may start and I put out there and it doesn't get enough traction, so I just put it away, or I start something and I squirrel and I start working on something else. So Dan knows more than most that, because I show him and I show Jody and I show Jerry. I show a couple people stuff, and just to get their feedback, just say, is this cool? Does it look right? Is this something you think people would want? So I just try to get my feelers out there a little bit.
Gotcha.
And if it doesn't work, it goes in the vault.
There you go. Now, just before we wrap up,
like the bond card.
there you go. Just before we wrap up, what are you working on now that you may want to tease? I know that we've got the Trinity is out there now. What's next on the plate for you?
I had the slide, because there was a statue out there, or I wouldn't say a statue, something like a Thundercat diorama that was being promoted, and people tend to want that same kind of flavor of my Thundercats. So I did a slide, but I don't really have anything right now because I just started back in school about 2 weeks ago.
Gotcha.
Took the summer off because of my surgery, and so once again, I know Halloween's coming up, and so I really I got dared into the Trinity, and so that really wasn't even something that I was prepared to even, and it's done. I literally was working on it when I was while you were putting in your cables, so it is officially done. I just have to export them out and check for errors, and I told everybody by Wednesday, so it's looking like if everybody chips in and does their part, that we'll be able to send them out earlier.
Right on.
So I have to make people wait.
Well,
but I don't have anything in the hole right now.
Well, we're always looking forward to new stuff that you're going to do. We look forward to the stuff that you already have, and our community is much richer for artists like yourself. And I believe that these guys that are in the chat tonight are probably feeling the same way, and they're going to jump on board. If they haven't got any of your models now, they soon will have.
My phone, my phone keeps going off for friend requests, but I'm trying to watch the channel on my phone versus, because I can't see that. I can't see the chats in our little thing. So if after we're done, guys, I'm gonna go hit confirm. I usually accept everybody's request. So unless you're friends with Dan Brewster, and then I just say, no, I'm not going to accept that friend request.
There you go.
I know people hang out with him.
All right, well, there's one request for you before we wrap up here, and that's from Jerry. He says, ask Frag to show us his Halloween face.
Oh.
He wants to see your Halloween face. So you've got the screen, buddy.
How you doing, guys?
The teeth look crazy.
All right, there you go.
And that's wrapping it up for a Saturday. I've got lunch here on my table, so I'm going to go and have a bite to eat. Take my wife home. Listen, you guys, thanks for joining us tonight. Frag, thanks for being my guest this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Love your work, and just keep up the good work, and we'll see a lot more models from you. And you guys out there, thanks for joining us on a Saturday night and taking time out of your busy day and sitting down and having some conversation with us. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Leave us a comment down below. We'll try and get some links into our description by tomorrow. If not, just go and check us out over on Facebook, and you can check us out on Instagram as well. We're kind of putting up some behind-the-scenes pictures going on there. And remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.